Hey, want to welcome on to the show Grant Ramey, VolQuest.com, my colleague over there, and to kind of break down and react, I guess, to the start of transfer portal season for Tennessee basketball. Really good start so far. Jacoby Gillespie and Jaylen Carey. What do you like about these two and kind of the first two building blocks on a couple of more that's going to happen for Tennessee basketball as Rick Barnes constructs this new season's roster for next winter?
Jacoby Gillespie, love that addition. Makes sense on so many different levels. Kevin Willard leaves Maryland for Villanova. Jacoby Gillespie had transferred from Belmont. He's a Greenville kid, East Tennessee kid, and starred at Maryland in his 1 year there. So for him to have this opportunity to come here, Tennessee needs somebody to replace Zakai Ziegler, obviously. Huge shoes to fill. It's going to be really tough to do, but you look at the numbers, you look at what he did at Maryland, his 1 year there, it looks like he can play at a really high level. Is a huge position of need. It looks like you got a huge addition out of the transfer portal there. Jaylen Carey was a little bit more surprising. Jacoby Gillespie seemed a little bit more like you could connect the dots based on what was happening at Maryland, what was happening at Tennessee. Jaylen Carey was a little bit more surprising because I just didn't expect them to go that route initially. I thought they might go more of a stretch four, and they could still add a stretch four to this class. But he's more of a power forward, actually 6'8", 245, move guys around, knows how to score it. I'm not surprised Tennessee coaches were impressed with him because he had, I think, 18, 7, and 3 in Knoxville before he fouled out, and he had 14 and 10 in Nashville when Vanderbilt beat Tennessee. So he played really well in his 2 games against Tennessee. I think he has really high upside. And I think Tennessee's kind of trying to add forwards to throw as many bigs at people as they can because you've seen that, obviously, with Florida have success with that with a bunch of bigs that they rotated through, and maybe Tennessee's trying to replicate that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, on Carey, it's not like he averaged 20 points a game, but he had several games where he scored in he had a lot of games where he scored in double figures.
Right.
He had a couple of games where he scored over 20. He had a whole lot of success against Tennessee. Does a move like this, I mean, I'm not saying he's Grant Williams down there, but I mean, it creates a little bit more floor balance. I mean, it gives Tennessee an actual scoring threat on a consistent basis, it feels like, from the low post.
Right, and he is 6'8". He's a little bit undersized as a forward like Grant was. I think you're going the Jaylen Carey route based on what you've seen from him in a pretty small sample set. I mean, he's only a sophomore. He's got 2 years left, if I'm not mistaken. You need guys like that. Rick Barnes wants to play inside out. He likes to start possessions by getting it down in the paint and then kind of going from there. And you want to have somebody that you can throw it down there to and trust that they're going to be able to kind of go a little bit back to the basket and get and know what to do with it when you get the ball down there. I mean, back to the basket's a little bit outdated. It's not really the way a lot of teams play these days, but Rick still likes to play inside out like that a little bit. And that's a guy that it feels like he's just kind of scratching the surface. And Rick likes taking those guys where it feels like they've flashed a little bit and they can do so much more. I mean, Grant Williams was he was probably going to the Ivy League before Tennessee got in the picture. I mean, Rick has a history of, and I'm not saying Jaylen is Grant Williams by any stretch of the imagination, but he's had history of getting a guy like Zakai Ziegler who nobody really knew about, but you thought this guy was talented, so you're going to bring him in, you're going to develop him. I think it's a guy that's flashed and has tons of upside for them.
Let's stay in the portal here. A name that's kind of popular right now. I'm not saying that anything's about to happen, but a name that Tennessee fans are learning an awful lot about is actually a former teammate of Jacoby Gillespie at Maryland and Rodney Rice. Rice is scheduled to visit Tennessee later this week, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong, he's going to go see Villanova before. How real do you think the chances are of a Rodney Rice joining his former teammate in Jacoby Gillespie in Knoxville?
I think Tennessee has the advantage. I agree. I don't know that anything's done. I don't know how far down the road it is, but I think Rodney wants to play with Jacoby. I think Jacoby wants to play with Rodney. Tennessee has a huge position of need where Rodney is that off-ball guard. You look at Rodney's numbers, what he did as a sophomore at Maryland. He averaged like 14.8 or something like that in Big Ten play. Him and Jacoby were one of the best backcourts in the Big Ten. I believe they were roommates at Maryland. So there's an established relationship there. Like you got that working with you. Jacoby's going to be here on that visit with Rodney Rice this weekend at Tennessee. I believe he's going to Villanova for the visit first. That's where Kevin Willard went, the former Maryland coach. He left for Villanova. Villanova's probably a little bit more desperate for bodies and probably willing to throw a little bit more money at him. But I don't know that money's going to be the be-all, end-all in this recruitment because I think it's more of a you have Jacoby on your side. Other teams don't. I think that gives Tennessee the advantage.
Let's go to the prep level. A guy that Tennessee's been involved with from the get-go, okay? It's not like Tennessee's not been in it, but it does feel like Tennessee's trailed, the Dukes, the Louisvilles, the Arkansas, and maybe that's still the case, but it feels like it's very much more real now than it's ever been. Tell me where Tennessee stands with Nate Ament and Any thoughts on his timeline potentially, and kind of where Tennessee is in this? Because it does feel like Tennessee's all in on trying to land this guy.
Yeah, Tennessee is. They are all in. It feels like they've been in it for a while, and they had him on campus in January. They've had for an official visit. They've had him on campuses for unofficial visits in the past. So they've been at it for a while, but it felt like it cooled for a while, and then it felt like the ship had just sailed and it wasn't going to happen. It feels like to me Louisville's fading a little bit. I think Duke is still the biggest threat. I don't know where Arkansas falls in all this mess, but it feels like over the last few weeks that Tennessee had faded kind of out of the picture itself. But for whatever reason, Barnes and his staff feels like they've circled back and kind of pushed all in on Nate Ament. I think Rick really likes his game and wants to add him to this roster because of that game. I think it could also be a thing where you're looking at the portal and you're trying to figure out what are my best options here in the portal. And if you think Nate Ament's the best option, like you'd rather put X amount of money into Nate Ament instead of trying to spread it out in the portal, maybe they're going that route. But all in for sure on him in that recruitment. Timing wise, I don't think anybody really knows. He's playing in a some kind of event this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And then I think it's kind of like maybe get through that event and then kind of pick back up and see where things are from there, maybe sooner rather than later. But I think it's all a guessing game at this point. But Tennessee's in it. Conversations are happening. There's dialogue. So I think both parties are interested. But when you're battling Duke for a top 5 kid consensus, that's really tough. But Tennessee is putting up a fight. They're doing whatever they can to try to get the kid.
All right, so out the door, kind of lay down the positions of need for Tennessee after the 2 additions. And again, like you said, you get a 5-star from the prep rank that could affect what you do in the transfer portal. But tell me the positions of need still and how many slots there are available for Tennessee to utilize.
The exact number, I'm not exactly sure. I think you're bringing back 4 scholarship guys. You've signed 2 guys, and you've got another commitment. You signed Amari Evans, Dwayne Brown. You've got a commitment from Troy Henderson. That's 2 guards and a big. You're bringing back 3 forwards, and then Bishop Boswell alongside Cade Phillips, JP Estrella, and Felix Akpara, obviously.
I think there's 4 slots essentially, but they might not.
Right, and the question is, do you go from 13 to 15, and how quickly does all that stuff move? And even the number itself is a moving target. But the needs obviously are a 2-guard. Rodney Rice would fill that need if he ended up at Tennessee. I think a wing, Nate Ament, would fill that role if he ended up at Tennessee. I would still go after a stretch forward. The kid from Robert Morris, his name escapes me. He's from Spain. I would still go after one of those types that can play the 3 or the 4. Because you obviously already added Jaylen Carey, more of a power forward, but I think you could still kind of fill a stretch forward role because Igor Milicic is gone, and he did a lot of that kind of the stretch role for them. So shooting guard, biggest one right now, and then obviously the Nate Ament, obviously a huge recruitment too. They're going to be a big-time priority there and a focus there. But you need a shooting guard, you need a wing, and I think you need another stretch 4.
Grant Ramey, VolQuest.com. What are you doing now that, I guess you're covering the portal, but once portal season's over, that's like your vacation time, right?
No, I was actually thinking about dusting off my old baseball skills that I picked up in college about a million years ago, back in the Todd Raleigh era when it was friends and family only.
Well, for a guy that's going to be missing that time and you're going to be covering for him, I thank you for that. Grant Ramey, appreciate it as always, man. Thanks so much.
See you, buddy.